We're really busy up at Hanson Dam. The purpose for our briefing here is to kind of give you an idea of what we're up to, what kind of problems that we're facing, what we're doing about it, and perhaps to answer a few of your questions, some that I've actually heard while standing out in the foyer behind the table individually. I'll see if I can recreate some of those questions out here to answer for the rest of you. Hanson Dam, as you can see in this map, is about 64 miles upriver. It's about 40 miles upriver from here. It creates what's called the Eagle Gorge Reservoir, and it has many jobs that it performs for us. Now, typically, this is the question I get asked up at the front or out in the foyer. Somebody will come up to me and they say, "We hear you're storing water behind the dam." And I would say, "Yes, we have stored water behind the dam." He says, "Well, why don't you empty it out, before the floods come?" And I said, "That's right. That's a really good idea. We will." And if you look at the way we normally operate the project, you'll see from November to March that we start off November with the pool really low. Okay? In other words, it's empty. Okay, we drain it out to about 1077. If we go any lower, we make the river muddy, and that kind of irritates Tacoma because that's what they use. They use that river for their drinking water. Okay, so we really keep it low. All right, then between November and March, the storms come. This is typical rain cycle here, and we use the dam to store flood pools, as we call them, of short duration. So we bring the water level up in order to keep the water levels in the levees at a constant level, so that way we don't have flooding. Now, that's where our problem comes in, because we're not confident that the dam can store as much flood water as it has in the past. So therefore, that's where we're really working hard up at the dam in order to improve our confidence in it. Now, you'll see from March until June, you see that that uphill ramp. Well, that's us starting to collect that spring runoff. The water begins to melt off the mountains, and we collect it up in the reservoir, principally to take care of the industrial and drinking water needs of South King County residents and city of Tacoma, as well as taking care of the needs for spawning fish and ecosystems. And, really, because the Corps looks at the dam not just as a structure but as a project, we also have a lot of environmental restoration projects that are going on up and down the river. Now, you see in June we hold on to it, and then we start a slow ramp down. From about June to November, we drop that water down. All we're doing is just augmenting the river flow so that it never runs dry. Because typically, you know as well as I, that in August and July, it gets really dry around here. And the river levels, if we didn't add that water back, would typically dry up. And that's not good. It's not good for us, not good for the fish. So that's what Hanson Dam does, is provide that water back. So that kind of gives you an idea that we do think about draining that water out so that we're in a good position to store more flood water, because that job we got to do between November and March. This is Hanson Dam from the top, if you're looking down. Now, what's really interesting, I'm going to draw on this one. Okay. What's interesting is that this is the dam right here. That little part right there is actually the dam. The part that's giving us the issue is this green zone right in here. This green zone is an ancient landslide, all this through here. Now, because it's a landslide, it's made of materials that we're not really that sure of what they are. I mean, because if you were to walk out to that dam embankment and actually look up at the mountain, you can see where all those materials slid down from. And that happened about 10,000 years ago. It's a mixture of boulders and sand, and there's even some old ancient silts and clays in there. So it's such a mixture of materials, and it varies a great deal from hole to hole, that it creates a great deal of uncertainty in terms of what we face. Now, originally when they built the dam, they felt that, that if it was good enough to move the river from the right side or the north side of the valley to the south side of the valley, then it's probably good enough to hold back water. They put in a drainage channel in order to manage seepage, because seepage does naturally occur even with an engineered structure like a dam, but that's okay. It's when it goes out of control like it did in our last flood pool where it is a cause for concern. So let's talk about some of the things that we're doing in order to improve our certainty about the right abutment. If you see the black line and it has an arrow that says grout curtain, that's the elevation and about where we're putting in a grout curtain, and I'll explain in a little greater detail what that is. If you look a little bit up, you'll see that white line that has little lines that are sticking out like my palm of my hands. That's our drainage tunnel. That's a tunnel that runs underneath the right abutment. It's like a tunnel, you know, like a train tunnel, except it's much smaller. And we have all these drains that connect into it so that it collects up the water that flows through the right abutment and safely drains it out to the river. Okay. Without that in there, there's no way of telling where the water is going. And because we have filters in those drains, we can keep the smallest component of soil held back so that it doesn't cause erosion. If we leave that unchecked and water is just allowed to come piling out of there, it might take those little components of soil with it and cause erosion. And that's something that we absolutely do not want. So this is what our grout curtain construction pad looks like, that elbow that I showed you earlier up from the top. Okay, it's basically a concrete pad, a poured slab, and then we have these drills. And what those drills do is they actually drill down into the landslide material. And I've represented that landslide material here with those boulders, granite-looking boulders. It's actually a different material, but it's rocks, big rocks, and sand and things like that. We drill our way through that, and then we leave a casing in the ground. You know, casing, a pipe. And what we do with that is we pump cement into the ground of various viscosities, and we fill in all those voids and spaces so that it prevents water from going through that area. Now you can see that we have a thing called a lower aquifer, and we have this ancient silt layer. There used to be a lake actually up there back in the time of the Ice Age, and so there's a really thick layer of clay, which is a good material to tie into because it's waterproof basically. And so what we do is we drill into it and then we grout up from it, and we create this curtain. That's why we call it the grout curtain. Now we're just about done with the A row and starting work on the B row, okay, so that we have a nice tight barrier there. We'll bring in experts from all over the country, again, because they visit us frequently, and we'll begin to determine just what degree of certainty we have in terms of the performance of that right abutment. It's not a decision we make overnight. It's not a decision we make lightly. It's certainly a decision that we want to have the greatest minds working on. Some other things that we're doing, remember I told you about when I held my hands up and I showed all those drains coming out of the end of the drainage tunnel and in the corner of the drainage tunnel? Well, that's what it looks like on the inside. There's a guy in there with a little drilling rig, and he's actually putting in horizontal drains. And again, what that does is it lowers that water tension that's inside of that right abutment and removes it from the right abutment safely. So those are some of those efforts that we're doing. Those two techniques we feel when tied together will give us better performance. But we can't come out and say exactly how just yet until we kind of evaluate it, test it, and certainly see it perform under pressure. So I hope that I've been successful at answering some of your questions about what we're up to up at Hanson Dam, give you some reasonable technical detail about how we're accomplishing it, and just to let you know we're on schedule. We're working 24 hours a day. We're working around the clock to make sure that we get this in time. Around 1 November is what we're shooting for. So thank you for this opportunity. Mayor Cook, thank you.